Out here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned, immaculate.
Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest. This week, it's going to be a bit of a classic because I spoke to the one and only James Lascelles to talk about his life in music and much, much more. One-time member of the Global Village Trucking Company that we talk about from the early 70s, as well as decades, and still playing music to this very day. Was in a band called the Ivory Brothers, who had a lot of influence in this kind of area. I'm talking about East Anglia, and did a fantastic song called The Last Barsham Fair, and also was in an 80s band called The Breakfast Band. Anyway, look, we're going to hear about all this in the interview, so let's cut the waffle. So anyway, after several minutes of casual chat, we got down to that very exciting subject that was the early formative years. James, it's over to you. Take it away.
Culturally, see, I was around music all my life. My parents were musical. My mum was a pianist. My dad was into opera, knew everything about all the classical side. So that's what I grew up with.
Right.
Met a lot of the musicians, some of the stars, Yehudi Menuhin became a family friend. Ravi Shankar became a friend. Now, my dad went to India in the late 50s, 60s, and he fell in love with everything Indian. The clothes, the smell, the food, especially the music. It somehow grabbed him.
Yes. Well, that's quite some guest list.
He brought back a lot of sound and things, all Indian, and it really was exciting. I just took to the music. I loved the whole expression, the build-up, the exciting interchange between tabla and sitar. I didn't understand it, but I didn't need to. I just reacted to it because I was young, But it's always stayed with me. And my mum, so it's a classical side, and then of course I wanted to play blues and rock and roll and funk and soul and jazz.
Yeah.
Classical doesn't really prepare you for that. It prepares your fingers for technique, but it doesn't prepare you for that syncopation. It's totally different.
Yes. My God. So you've because a lot of
Did I answer your question?
I was just going to say, because most people I speak to, they come from sort of those, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but like sports people back in the day, it was kind of living on the streets. I was just watching a documentary about Bill Shankly, who was the Liverpool manager, and he said you had two choices. You went down the mines or you played football. That was your only option, and football was your only way out. So people took it really seriously. Otherwise, you were down the mines. Pardon?
Cricket was another one.
Right. So
we used to say that a strong England team was when you could whistle down the mines and a Yorkshire bowler would come up. Come to the surface. That's what they used to say.
Yes. So whereabouts did you grow up?
Yeah, good question. See, I'm up in Leeds now. This is my spiritual home, really, up here. I went to school in London, so I spent a lot of time in London, which was fantastic for music. But my sort of plugging into nature and being in the country and being, a wild kid going around outside, there was no restriction hardly. It was beautiful up here. So I'm a sort of Yorkshireman and part Yorkshireman. I don't sound it, but a lot of family here, and I've moved up here for a little bit right now, actually, for a little bit of peace and quiet from London.
Nice. Well, that's good. So during the 60s then, as we progressed through that famous decade, was it a moment of awakening, of sort of discovering the Beat generation, Jack Kerouac, Ginsberg, and then, Charlie Parker? We all love Charlie Parker, Cab Away.
Way back, you're going back now, yeah. But yeah, I know it. What changed for me, actually, was one day my brother, who was 3 years older than me, which was a lot in those days when you're in your teens, he brought back, I remember, not probably the same day, but these two albums particularly that made a big difference. One was Love Supreme by John Coltrane, and the other was a John Mayall, I think it was Laurel Canyon Blues. He just moved over to America. And hearing these two, well, to me, it was like the freedom. There was no bars like you have in classical music. Everything wasn't a da-da-da-da and set and stop there. And it was all a little bit chaotic. And I was, what is this? Once I heard this music, and this, especially Love Supreme, where Coltrane just plays without stopping hardly, his imagination, his ideas, his playing is just beautiful. And so that changed me a lot too. And that with the Indian music, and and I told Mum I wanted to be a drummer, not a piano player anymore. But I'd studied piano.
Right.
So I started drumming with Jimmy Blades, who was the top percussion man at the Philharmonic. And I said, no, Mum, he was all rat-a-tat on the snare drum. No, I want to play like this guy, Ginger Baker, double bass drum. That's what I wanted to do, So, Mum, bless her, she got me a drum kit, even though it drove everybody crazy.
Yes, I would imagine that's well, there must be a few instruments, but the drum must be,
Drum
hearing
kits, yeah.
someone practicing the drums must be delightful for the neighbour. So yes, that's good. So did you take to the piano and keyboards quite quickly and easily?
Yeah, I mean, being a musical family is great though, because there's always music about. Doesn't matter what kind. Classical music is beautiful upbringing as well. But yeah, something about the piano, the rhythmical possibilities, which equate with drums and percussion, because you're using your two hands, or use your feet for the drums. But there's a definite connection between the two. A lot of piano players are good drummers and vice versa, because they've got that separation. It's almost your left hand sometimes becomes another, especially when you're holding a bass. It becomes a different. Okay, you're doing that, unless the right hand just goes off. The left hand still, can do that almost. So you definitely, it's a way of connecting your left and right, your analytical and your instinctive side, isn't it?
Yes. So as we were watching, well, I was like back three at the time, but as you were watching the sort of the charts of the 60s, did you start getting excited and inspired and wanted to join a band like the Animals?
Or the Beatles, or the Stones, or the Who, or so many. Jethro Tull. It was exploding in the 60s. It
Yes.
exploded in London. I went to school in London. I was hearing all these incredible bands, great venues, real funky, brought the best out of people, Marquee Club and all these places. And it was great. I wanted to be in all these bands, and I had a school band as well.
Yes. So what
So
was your first gig? What was the first gig you went to?
First gig I went to. Well, you see, it's not quite fair because my dad took me to a lot of opera. I went to a lot of
Yes.
classical music when I was young. That's a gig. I mean, a full-blown orchestra is louder than a rock band. You know that when it's going.
Yeah.
It's going, and you are assaulted. And it's the same level as a rock band. But they're not all going all the time. That's the difference. The orchestra.
So what was the first gig you went to without your dad?
That's really hard. I remember going to festivals when I was a very wee teenager, about 13, 14. But, I can't remember the very first gig. There were so many. Never saw the Beatles. I saw the Stones much later. I used to go to all the local clubs, like the Marquee, to see Chicken Shack and Rory Gallagher and Keith Hartley, Colosseum, all these great bands of the 60s, 70s.
Yes.
So the first gig, jeez. I have to think of that one, David. I can't picture the very first. I know the first gig I played with a proper band, not the school band.
Yes.
I can't do the first gig I went to because I was always going to concerts. It was a concert and then became a gig. It's the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Classical musicians still say I'm playing. I'm doing a gig tonight.
So did the folk world, Bert Yance, Davy Graham, the kind of Al Stewart, Bob Dylan, did those guys at all kind of excite you?
Leonard Cohen particularly, and Joni Mitchell. I used to listen to a lot of American.
Yes.
But yes, all of those you mentioned. Yeah, I did. Dylan, I didn't always get, but I loved his stories, some of his stories. So yeah, listen. I always said, and I said to my kids, and I sort of did it myself without really knowing. If you love music, listen to everything. Listen to all of it, every genre, flamenco, reggae, classical, rock, funk, jazz, and then you won't maybe like all of it, but there'll be stuff that you didn't know about that you might. Whoa, I like this now. So it all contributes to the notes you play.
Well, absolutely. So then in the early 70s, obviously the 60s dream slightly comes to a sort of a weird end, doesn't it? With the death of Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, then we had sort of Altamont and things start to get a bit tricky.
Altamont was the one, that was the one, wasn't it? Altamont.
And the Charles Manson murders. And a lot of people I spoke to from the 60s time, Barry Miles and people like that, when I said and asked them, why did that, what happened to you? Because obviously in the 60s you were there, in the 70s completely gone. Well, not completely, but they were not kind of on the zeitgeist. And he said, well, we were very tired and we just wanted to go to sleep. And that was the end of his kind of being there on the scene, I suppose. And people like Hoppy Hopkins had gone to prison, and obviously that must have had a big impact on people.
Filmmaker.
Yeah, John
Hopkins. We knew
Hopkins.
Hoppy well. We knew Hoppy used to come and do lots of videos for us.
Right.
Amazing guy, Hopkins. Yeah, John Hopkins. We loved him. He was a great guy. And
Yeah,
listen,
but
listen, David, I have to say, in the 70s, man, we took off. That was one of the best times of my life.
well, I know. Well, see,
Best time. I was 18, 19. I was starting a band. I was down in, I think it was Oxford Polytechnic, playing a gig on the floor, grungy, your floor stuck to your feet. I was playing Hammond organ. After an hour, these girls come and lean on it and start, smoking, whatever, everyone was smoking and everything in those days. At the end of the gig, so I'm looking at them all night thinking, whoa, I'm playing. Somebody puts a tenner in my hand. I go, right, what is going on, man? This is it. And that was it. That was probably about 17. I remember sitting at school when I was 13, going to my, the public school actually, looking out the window on the first day thinking, I've got 4 more years of this and then I can start band. That's what I thought.
yeah.
So that's for a 13-year-old to think 4 years, that's a lot of his life already. That's a quarter of his life. To think that was my target. And as soon as I left school, I started a band.
That's it. There was no plan B, was there? Lemmy had the same thing. I think when he was at school, he saw, as he probably said, he saw these young girls hanging around with the kid with the guitar, and he thought, perhaps that might work for me, and it did. So there you go. That was his
Lemmy.
Lemmy, yeah.
Lemmy.
Lemmy from Motorhead. So
all these people you talk about, I know them all.
oh,
We've come across each other. We've done gigs on the same bill together.
well, he was in a band called the Rockin' Vickers before Hawkwind, and then
Yeah.
obviously the Hawkwind period and all the world of
All the Pink Fairies and all those guys, and then you see punk was coming in the 70s. It was an amazing, crazy cocktail. There was punk on one side, got Mahavishnu Orchestra with Coltrane and these sublime musical craziness, and all these funk bands that are sort of doing all the pub circuits and the polytechnics and universities. The possibilities, man, was so amazing in those days.
there was a lot of possibility. So when was the Global Village Trucking Company, and when did that sort of come into being?
That was I started that band in 72, as I said, right after I left school. So I was about 17, 18. All I wanted to do was play in a band. I mean, my musical chops in terms of playing rock or funk or pop were hopeless because I was still trying to do the transition from classical music to, but I was so into it, and I was drumming away as well. And it was 72. The bass player that I had the school band with, he knew his sister was going out with this guy, right? So, no, sorry, he was. Anyway, the connection was we found a drummer and a guitar player who were down in East Grinstead, which is a Scientology headquarters.
Oh, nice.
They were being indoctrinated, right?
Mm.
Staying in a tent, it had a really strong vibe in those days, Scientology. It was quite dangerous. And it got a lot of musicians, Incredible String Band, Chick Corea, Stanley Clark, a lot of them became Scientologists.
Yeah, well, I did an interview with Rose from the Incredible String Band, and she said that was kind of the end of the band when I think two of the members, all three of the members, all ended
they all
up.
Did. Like Matt Howard and Robin Winslow, they all did. I mean,
yeah.
we knew them. We knew their manager was American, Susie, at the time, and she tried to get us all into it. We just weren't having it. I wasn't into it. But anyway, these two, they heard about there was a band coming. Let's get out of here because it was a bit weird down there, and they got out just in time because. One thing is becoming a Scientologist, which I don't want to get into it because I've been in and out of that situation. But you can't get out. And if you do get out, they hound you. You're hounded and your life is ruined. I've known people's lives are ruined. Marriages are separated and lost their jobs because the guys won't have it. And that's not good. That was very, in the 70s, it was very strong and quite dangerous.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got them out of there. So we had a drummer, guitar player, myself and the bass player. We went to live in the country, actually, in Suffolk, just outside Aldborough. My mum had a house on the beach. She let us for 6 months, and we just honed our skills. We got a singer from Oxford, and we spent 6 months down in the basement in the garage, playing. I mean, it was horrendous, some of it first, but slowly it took shape. There were some musicians nearby who were staying in Manfred Mann's house in Leiston, Suffolk, right?
Right.
This is a good story. And Manfred had lent them this house, among whom was Alan White, the drummer, played with Tasticona Band and Yes and all these people. You know the whole thing. And then a lot of the Geordie, there's a great band which never unfortunately came because Alan White got nicked by Yes. But they used to come over and they were, as musicians, way ahead of what we were doing. But they gave us so much input. Oh, this is great. We could do this and play these sounds. And they were really, ahead of us. And But we soon caught up, and we played with a lot of those guys since. I've known them all for years.
Yes.
Amazing musicians, lovely musicians.
So
Anyway, go on.
I was going to say,
give long answers, David. I'm afraid I tend to just keep going.
No, it's good. Because to be honest, I'm from Suffolk, so there is a kind of a.
So were we. The band was based in Suffolk.
But you went from there to a place near Dis, I thought, as a community.
Yeah, initially we did. We went to, well, when we moved out of Suffolk, just outside Aldborough, we actually went to Oxford to play at a May Day, which was a big open air, 1st of May thing in Oxpens, one of the big green areas there. And we ended up staying there for 6 months, squatting. Lowell Coxhill came and jammed with us. Lowell.
Oh, right.
Him? Oh, what a great player. He was such a great vibe. He insisted on coming because he loved the name of the band, and he dressed up in a bear suit. Right, he had this bear suit on and played this soprano sax. It was fantastic. Anyway, we spent 6 months squatting and doing everything a band does. You know, we had illegal parties, we had LSD parties. We were playing all the local places in Oxford. But then we thought, well, we can't do this forever. Squatting, it's getting a little bit hairy. The cops are coming in and out. So we found this little cottage just outside Dis, which was a run-down little thatched cottage, little rooms. When we set the equipment up, you basically, if one person moved that way, we all had to move away. Just crammed, but somehow we made it work for, we were there for about a year.
Right, that's quite interesting. People, and because we talked, just briefly mentioned Scientology, I mean, cults and communities were quite a big thing in the 70s, wasn't it? And because Richard Thompson was also in some sort of spiritual group down in Suffolk as well, wasn't he?
Was it? Okay, well, the thing is, the word commune, that was the word that made everyone think free love, wife swapping. What does it mean? No, it means actually you have a life in the country, you grow your own food, you raise your own, in our case, goats we had. We got cheese, milk, we had lambs, so we had food as well, meat. We actually fairly self-sufficient, but being a rock and roll band, we weren't that, what's the word?
Clean?
We didn't keep it up as much because we traveled a lot, off on the roads. We had to leave people behind to do it, and sometimes we did some, anyway.
Yes.
But it was the commune, and that meant living together, right? So we all, which was obviously a lot cheaper for 20 people to live in one house.
One TV license.
There you go. And finally, when we moved out, my brother and I got together and we got a place near Beccles. We ended up near Beccles.
So
Southwell, actually.
Right. Because just on that point, because I bizarrely did an interview with dear old Keith Christmas earlier today, and he told me a story of when he came and stayed in the house with the Global Village Trucking Company. And he said that, and whether you'll remember this or you think, no idea, but he said he stayed in a room that was Bunty's room that had sort of a horsehair mattress or pillow or straw pillow. And he said it was really one of the most uncomfortable nights of his life. And he said it was...
That's in the attic. That was up in the attic.
So that's a true story.
Well, he did stay, if he's meant Bunty's room, that was up in the attic, yeah. We had about 20 people living there. We had about 10 bedrooms.
An 80-year-old lady.
No central heating. No heating. No central heating.
Yes,
everyone had their own little fires, and we had big log open fires in the sitting room.
So from that description from Keith, it was definitely a scene. You were definitely part of a kind of a scene as well.
Listen, they made a TV documentary about us, By Way of a Change, which was as much about the music as about our lifestyle. Because it was an alternative lifestyle. That's what people were looking at, questioning, marveling, liking, disliking, whatever it was. Because it all relates to music, drugs, free love. That's what not necessarily in that order. That's all that people that didn't, they're just looking from the outside. That's what they associated.
Yes.
Associate maybe a more mindful, more peacefulness, more serenity to life. They didn't think of that. They just thought of the sensational things. That's what people do.
Yes. But also, interestingly enough, there was...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've got that. Yes, yeah.
The fairs and the festivals of East Anglia, which had a picture of Lowell Coxon in. So were you...
that as well. I think there's a picture of band in those, right?
There might be. So were you, because the first Barsham Fair was 1971, 72, something like that. The first Glastonbury with Dear Old Keith Christmas was 1970. And so did you, there was this obviously a kind of a change of kind of mind. People all bought the Self-Sufficiency book by Peter Seabrook, I think. And there was kind of the Cranks cookbook, might have come out later. But did you sort of have that sense with the fairs and festivals? Because the Albion fairs that started to grow and the Barsham fairs were growing, the fairs were growing. So did you have that sense that you were on a mission?
Not so much a mission, more, yeah, almost. I mean, it was almost a mission. Yeah, that's quite a good question in terms of as a mission, but we also were trying to survive as a band, right? So we wasn't just, we became known as playing at free festivals all the time. Nobody paid us at first because we got a lot of publicity. We got busted for playing on the streets in the Prince of Wales in London, Camden Town. And they came and busted us, which we were just doing a totally peaceful concert on the back of a flatbed truck. It was squatters. That was the problem. The whole street was squatted, and they didn't like the independent industry. We had a cooperative which selling bulk rice and grain and all that, and it was a really great scene there. And the police came and arrested us. There was a riot outside the police station. We got into all the papers, the IT, all the alternative papers, and our name became suddenly quite notorious overnight. That was about 72, 73.
Right.
So people, let's get the Globs. We call us the Globs. Let's get them to come and play. Okay, well, can you pay our expenses? Oh, we haven't got any money. Well, we've got to get up there. Some petrol. Okay, well, here, we never got paid in terms of that, but we used to play because you have to play. Otherwise, you don't get anywhere. And then, of course, eventually, we started getting a lot of gigs, and probably 100 gigs a year or more.
Yes.
I looked at the old logbook. In January, we did like 15 gigs one year. In January, that's unheard of, man. Anyway, and that was my brother who was managing us.
What's your brother's name?
Jeremy.
There you go.
In the industry.
Yeah. So with did you have much connection with Hawkwind at the time? Because when you mentioned free festivals and squatting parties and stuff.
Not on a very personal level. We did a lot of gigs with them. I remember one gig we did I think it was the Lyceum. The guys in the band got better memories than me. Right? I've got a very selective memory, and I forget way too much. I wish I didn't. But I do remember this one gig we did with Hawkwind, and we did a few on the same bill of the Roundhouse. I remember playing with them at the Roundhouse. People like Quintessence, Gong, Global Trucking Company, Camel, all these amazing bands from the 70s. Really good musicians, really trying to do something. And the world was open. The music world, you could try anything. It was new. But anyway, this one gig with Hawkwind, they were top of the bills. They just had a hit with My Silver Machine, whatever. So they were riding it. But before we went on stage, on the side, on a table was a bowl full of what looked like little pebbles or something. And you just go on, take one of those before you go on. So we all took one, right, went on stage. Luckily, our set only lasted an hour, because after an hour, some very strange things. It was acid. They didn't tell us what started happening. If it had been instant, we could not have played. And they play almost every night at that time. What acid? I don't know how you do it. But luckily, when the time we came off, we'd stopped. We didn't have it on. We'd stopped, so that was all right. But man, Hawkwind, they really went for it.
Yes, amazing band.
I mean, I didn't know them personally, but we did a lot of same bills, together.
Yes, well, anything, dear old Lemmy, we loved Motorhead in the end. But you then recorded your first album, which was in the famous Rockfield Studios, Monmouth, didn't you?
Yeah.
What was that experience like?
Oh, that was fantastic. It was the first time most of us have been. I was probably the youngest. I think the bass players were a bit younger. But the other guys were 4 or 5 years older than me. They'd never really been in the studio to record. So they were in their early, mid-20s. I was just coming out my 18, 19, 20. I just loved the whole process of it. It was so different. We've been doing a lot of live playing, let's say, for over a year and a half. Really getting quite a lot better than when we started, put it that way. And the whole process of being there and, of course, staying there. So you wake up in the morning, have your breakfast, go straight in the studio. That is still the best way of recording. A residential studio, I still do it with this day. With my own stuff, and I record with Steve Harley, he does the same thing. Anyway, so we had a producer who was really good. He really explained things to us. And we had a great time. We were there 2 weeks initially, and then I think we went back to do overdubs. I think the next door studio was Brinsley Schwartz, and Queen had just left, or they were there. There was an overlap. Brinsley's, we became quite friendly with the Brinsley Schwartz guys. You know all these names I'm talking about?
Yep, I absolutely Brinsley, and that was that Nick Lowe's gang.
Yeah, Nick Lowe was in that. Bob Andrews on keyboard. I forgot the drummer. Brinsley was guitar player. I forgot. Anyway, there was a great band, really good band.
Yes, but then you were on a label called Caroline Records, weren't you?
Yeah, that's Virgin spin-off, you know that?
Right, okay.
That was the first, I think Virgin were trying to branch out. And Caroline, I think, was the girlfriend of one of the guys working there or something like that. And so they just called it Caroline Records. And we were the first to be on that label. And unfortunately, the album came out just after we split up. We split up posthumously. And it's a shame, actually, because in a way it captured a lot of stuff. But this, I have to say, David, this remaster that we've just done, the reissue, sounds great. And there's like 10 more tracks, 18 tracks altogether.
I mean,
you heard it? You heard it?
Yeah, yes, they sent me a copy. I've got it. Well, I've got the MP3s, actually. I haven't got the vinyl, the CD.
No, that's not good. No, it's not this one. Right?
I've only he just sent me the files.
Who's he?
At Cherry Red Records.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
They're generous with their MP3s.
But you should get the album, because it's a little collector's item.
I would imagine.
Oh, what happened? Hello?
I'm still here.
No, you just disappeared.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Oh, thank God for that. So look, why did you record an album on the honeymoon period, and then why did you split up?
Well, we didn't mean to split up. The album was supposed to, the album takes time, and then you go back on the road. The album go through the process before it gets released. It has to be remastered. It has to be packaged, blah, 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 all that stuff. You don't have to all be there. So we kept playing. And then the guitarist left. He'd been one of the stalwarts, like, although I started it, it was like the four of us become really close. And then there was the five in the end. That kind of took the stuffing out. But the guitar player who replaced him was the guy who played in that Alan White band in Man from Man's Place in Mason I was talking about, Pete Kirtley.
Right.
Since went on and played with Leanne Cowell and Bert Jansch and loads of other people. He's now quietly retired up in Saxmundham in his garden up in Suffolk. But Pete came and played with us for a while. In fact, he plays on a couple of tracks on the album. Good player, good guitar player.
Yes.
Never quite the same. I don't know what happened. And then the singer didn't want to live in the same house anymore with his girlfriend, and then the whole thing kind of dissipated, because part of the thing was being in the commune, which meant when you're on the road playing gigs, when you're off the road, you come home, set up the equipment we had in the end. We had a really nice rehearsal room, and you just play 3-4 days off. You're playing, you're jamming, you're trying new songs, you're rehearsing, you're whatever, jamming, getting high, playing music. That's all we ever did. That's all we did.
So 75, you break up or split up. You're only in your sort of early 20s, and then punk is happening. And so, how did you feel about the next chapter?
It was a whole one, because punk. I loved the energy of punk, and what they were saying was, screw you, man. Everyone can play music. Don't be a snob. Don't be, it's for the people. I liked all that whole energy. Just I didn't like the music, and I didn't like the gobbing, man. There was a couple of times we were on stage, no gobbing. I couldn't do that.
No,
that wasn't good. Cool. And I'm just, it's not that musical. I love music and melody and arrangements, and it's not musical for me. I'm not saying it's not for other people. But I joined a guy called Mike Story. We played a band called Cuckoo, and I was doing a lot of sessions, loads of sessions. That was what kept us going.
yes.
All kinds of different. That was a session. It was the best time. I did a session with Al Shanker, the violin player, with Frank Zappa producing, with Joan Armatrading, with Annette Peacock, with Sly and Robbie, with all kinds of people.
You were there. But just going back to your experience with Mike's Story, you bringing this one album out, which is quite neat. Pardon?
Do you know who I'm talking about when I say Mike's Story?
Yes, because you do a famous album or single called The Last Barsham Fair.
Oh, yeah. Okay, there you go. We were the Ivy Brothers. We played quite a lot of these fairs.
Yes.
No, more than the Globs, the Global Village. We only played that a couple of times. Mike Story and I used to go and play there all the time, and we eventually had a band together. We played a lot in for a few years called Cuckoo.
Yes, and I have got the vinyl record in this very house.
Oh shit! Okay. Well, but at that time, as well as that, there was so much going on. The music scene was just wide open, man. People doing sessions, sometimes 2 or 3 a day. It was a great time, actually. I have to say, it was a great period there.
Yeah. So bringing this album together, can you remember much about doing this particular album?
Which one?
Iona.
Iona, yeah. Oh, yeah. I can remember a lot. Because we had John Porter, who was the producer, and Bob Potter, the Porter and Potter Productions, or Potter and Porter Productions. We didn't know which way around it was. Anyway, John since went to America and done a lot of people like Bonnie Raitt and Taj Mahal and Jimmy Smith and all these different people, Buddy Guy. But he was a friend of Mike Story, and he produced this album. Really did a great job. It had a very musical thing, and we had a manager called Mim Scala, who had been in the business, had done some film agent work. And we went out to LA. We had some adventures in LA that I could tell you about all night, but you probably heard them all anyway. And we almost got a deal. We got into A&M recording studios. We played at the Troubadour, Mike Story and I, where Elton John played. We brought the house down because we were a duet. He was on the bottom, I was on the top, which is what my mum used to do when she was playing classical music. She was a duettist.
Right.
For some reason, we really worked like this. And of course, not often you see, and we were taking parts, we knew what we were doing. We brought the Troubadour down, man. Troubadour, have you ever been there in LA?
No, but
it's sort of stacked. It's like that. It's got a few floors, so people are looking down, and you're in the middle. And that's how it was set up this time.
Right. I remember seeing a film with a very early Elton John gig at the Troubadour, and it was like one of the places.
That's what made him in America. That's what made him.
It was the place, wasn't it? So yes, the last Barsham Fair, which had John Porter, who went on to work with or produce the Smiths, who was one of my favourite bands in the 80s.
Yep, John. And John's moved to America. He's still a really good friend. But moved to America for a long time, and now he's just come back the last few years. He's back in England.
Yes. So were you, I mean, writing that song, The Last Barsham Fair, which I know I keep going on about, can you, was that a sort of homage to the fairs and festivals?
Yeah, actually, I didn't write it. Mike Story wrote it. I played on it, but that's actually his song. And we connected there. You see, we had a very strong relationship, and we had about a year or so, no more, 2 or 3 years, where we just played everywhere, did everything. We were fearless, completely fearless. And so he wrote that, obviously, about Barsham Fair is mentioned because it was one of the first, and it's acoustic and there's no electricity, but there's a load of other, so all the festivals really. And I think that was the last one, because I think towards the end of the 70s or 80s, they ran out of money, they had no more grants or sponsorship, and the whole thing sort of petered out, didn't it, the fairs?
It did. I mean, and they got too big, and I think then there was the Travellers and Convoy, and
Travellers didn't help.
And nobody really wanted to take the amount of work and responsibility for so little money. So then that was the kind of so you and Mike eventually went your separate ways in a good one. Yeah. But then what happens next in the 80s?
Oh my God. Well, I can tell you the first half of it. I joined this band, the Breakfast Band. Do you know that band? Have you heard of that?
I've only come across the name.
Because we were what they call acid jazz or jazz, fusion jazz. We had a 7-piece band, and it was a completely mixed culturally. We had a Trinidadian Guyanese drummer, a Trinidadian Syrian pan player. The percussion player was from Dominique. We had a Japanese bass player. I was English. Sax player was English, and who am I missing out? Guitar player, Winston Delanjo, Chinese, Portuguese, Trinidadian, or something. So the whole band was a mix, right? We played this crazy instrumental, almost Italian music, with sax, pan. Ken Neely was the pan, keyboard, guitar, bass, drums, and percussion. I mean, we just when we hit our stride as a band, as a rhythm and the tunes, people loved it. People really got influenced. Courtney Pine said if it wasn't for that band, he wouldn't have been doing what he's doing.
Yes. Did you, because you released about 3 or 4 albums? Because at that point there'd been this kind of rise of the kind of, I suppose you had bands like Sade and Working Week, and I think a band called Loose Ends. There was that kind of fusion of a kind of pop jazz world fusion. Were you one of the first bands to capture that sound and vibe?
I think we were, because we used steel pan. Okay, steel pan hadn't been used in that context. That was used almost always for calypso or reggae or the Caribbean vibe. Although we had that, but we could be a killer funk rock almost, but and jazz. All these sensibilities came in, all these influences that we had in the band, and it was a great combination actually. Um, we were together about 3 years. We went to Europe a few times. We recorded an album for a Japanese company who unfortunately didn't pick up the second option because we'd already recorded another album. We did 2 albums, but the second one never came out. And we digitally remastered it in Germany at half speed to get greater clarity.
Right.
Half speed, yeah. And it's called Dolphin Ride, Breakfast Band. And it was very, very influential. A lot of people that still today come and say, "Oh, you guys in the Breakfast Band? We watched you back in the day, and you were." A lot of musicians came to watch us because the word got round that this was this crazy 7-piece band with all these soloists and tunes and vibes, and we got quite a following, I must say.
I would imagine. And there was that kind of, especially in that period, the sort of early 80s, there was quite a sort of, I suppose, a demand for it at that time. But then you worked with just about everybody. You mentioned Annette Peacock, but Joan Armatrading as well.
Yeah, Joan was good. She was great.
Were you the go-to person for keyboards?
I was one of them. There were a few of us, but I was one of them. I was the go-to person for. I used to be quite well known for my mini Moog solos and electric piano, Hammond. I mean, all of it actually. But yeah, there was a few of us, because it was healthy competition. Keyboard players don't tend to get along as well as, say, a brass section or guitar players. They have a little secrecy thing. Keyboard players, it's like they've got a little secret. No, this is my chord here. You're not going to follow that chord or that shape. Guitar player, it's all open. You can't see it. You can't hide it on a guitar. But on a keyboard, it's like something slightly wary of each other. Although we all get along, but there's something. So yeah, I mean, there was a few, but I definitely did a lot of sessions.
Yeah, my God, you've done like hundreds with people like Lee Scratch Perry, who.
Scratch Perry, we went to Jamaica to do it with him. Unfortunately, no, not unfortunately, but part of the experience was that he couldn't keep it together. He literally couldn't keep it together. He had too much, very strong weed over there, right? And if you drink as well, excessively, it doesn't mix very well. And he was just very unreliable, quite aggressive sometimes, really beautiful other times, very unpredictable, quite destructive, not in a physical way to us, but to his equipment and to the people around him, possibly.
Yes. Well, it's interesting because I remember I done another interview with a woman who got asked to play with Lee Scratch Perry, and I can't remember what the instrument was, but she walked in with it because she was asked to come along to the session. And then he had an episode and told her to put the instrument in the corner and not touch it. And she was like, "That's my instrument. I don't know what to do, actually." And then apparently he had wires all up in his leg and in his kind of clothes and coming out of his, and she was like, "I think I'm going to get my instrument and run."
Well, when we first got there, we were all, Jamaica, I hadn't been to that kind of climate before. It was 1980, and I was supposed to stay in his house. Well, staying in his house was a room with a sort of bed, but there was a passage going through. It wasn't a private room. There was a kitchen there, and people kept walking through. I was trying to get to sleep the first night. It was just constant. The guys who were Dutch who were organising this project with Lee Scratch. This ain't going to work, man. I can't. And Scratch just never goes to sleep. He just start ranting and raving. Always something going on with Scratch, and it was very hard to predict him sometimes.
Yes.
Anyway, we all stayed out up in the Blue Mountains in this nice hotel in the end, and then went down. But the first thing he asked us to do was, "Yeah, man, we need something in the drum booth." The drum booth. He wanted water. He wanted a glass where the bass drum could sit, but water, because he figured it would give a good resonance, right? It would give a good drum sound. This funky studio. So I don't know why he got round to it. The sax player, who was a really good, another guy from this Manfred Mann band called Bud Beadle, who played with everybody, sax man. He started doing it, and we said, "Bud, come on, let you start." So basically, the whole session got put on hold for about a week or two, and then Bud said, "I've had enough." He went off. And we never got enough. We never got the work done because he was always fiddling around. He ripped all the leads out of his new 16-track console as soon as it arrived from Miami. Right, the Americans set it up for him, especially for this project. And in one evening before he came, he just decided, took all the plugs out and had no idea how to put them back together again. And that was another part reason why we didn't get much work done. So
No.
he was on prediction.
So,
Brilliant.
but working with Sly and Robbie must have been a very different experience.
Well, funny, it was Scratch's wife, Pauline, who had some songs. When we looked like this is scheduled with Scratch is not going to happen, right? We're not going to do anything. She said, "Oh, come. So it was me, GT Moore, guitar, Bud Beadle on sax. Okay. And the idea was to join with the Jamaican rhythm section to have cultural melting pot of reggae rhythm from Jamaica and top lines from England. That was what they wanted to do. And Scratch producing and mixing the whole thing. So what was the question again? Sorry, I'm getting
Yeah, Sly and Robbie, working with Sly and Robbie.
So Pauline, his wife, said, come on, let's go off and do some recording. So we went down to Channel 1, which is the studio in downtown Kingston. And walked in, and there was Sly and Robbie, who were just about building up a big rep. This was 78, 79. So they were building up a big reputation, the two of them. Sly with no teeth, no front teeth, beautiful hair. He looked great behind his kit. And Robbie was MD doing the whole thing. So she, listen to this. So the three of us sat this funky hammer now with a couple of notes broken and really dusty, and I sort of cleaned it. I said, "Why are you doing? I'm cleaning up." And sax guitar. She would sing to Robbie, right, who was over there. The drum booth is over there, right down the side of the room. She'd sing this song to him, and he'd sort of a minute or so, and he'd say, "Okay, about 1, 2, 3, 4," and he'd had his bass line, or as she was singing in his head. He didn't look at us at first, didn't, and we sort of after first, okay, we caught it because we've been there. Well, we caught the riff, and he did it twice more. 1, 2, 3. The third time or fourth time, 1, 2, and he looked at us because we were keeping up. He wasn't fooling us.
Yeah.
He was trying to immediately, see if we were up to it. So the fourth, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we all came in together. It was great. So we did about, and I don't know to this day what happened to those tunes, because we did about 4 or 5, I think about 6 tunes. Everyone, her singing to him. We couldn't make out particularly the melody, and he had this bass line. Fantastic.
Yes.
Robert Shakespeare, yeah.
Well, I remember in the 80s going to see a lot of their gigs at the, they would come to the UEA, the Taxi Gang, and they would just play for about 3 hours, and then they'd have these different singers come in and doing the, right, their like 1 hour slot or half an hour slot. It was just stunning at the time. But then during that period, when did you decided to relocate to America for a bit?
Yeah. Well, for 10 years I went to New Mexico with my new family, second family. And we ended up in New Mexico for 10 years. I had a great life out there. I sort of abandoned things here. Obviously, I'm in America. But I was learning. Yeah, I did. It was a very, very great experience. Apart from giving me 2 beautiful kids. My wife at the time, unfortunately, she passed away quite a few years ago. And we weren't together. But I learned about another culture, completely Native American culture.
Yes.
And really not even so much on a, what's the word? It's just they have such a deep culture. It's so simple. And, no bullshit involved. It's like, okay, you can either follow this or you can't, because it's not really very complicated. So, and I ended up recording different ceremonies and songs and dances and powwows in New Mexico and in the Southwest, because that's where a lot of tribes are out there in the Southwest.
Yes. And did the landscape?
I was also playing in bands. I had my own band out there called It's a Small World Band. I became a DJ on the university station. One of the only English voices. They loved the voice, and I was doing all this world music for 3 hours. And I was joined the local top bands. We were doing about 15 gigs a month in the summer. So I was just playing away like normal, But learnt a lot being from Native American people who were very deep, very soulful people.
I would imagine. So then, sort of in the mid-90s, you relocated back to the UK.
Yeah. and played and joined a theatre company.
Is this the Footspan Travelling Theatre?
Yeah, that's it. You got it. You've done your research, mostly. Yeah,
Or vaguely.
And actually, my first wife working in it, and it was a great company, really. We went to India, and we did this project called The Odyssey with 5 Indian people who'd never been out of their country, 4 actors and a musician. We did this 2.5-year tour all over, well, England, Europe, Ireland, Spain. We went to Colombia, we went to Costa Rica, and back to India. About 2.5 years, we toured this amazing show with loads of instruments. I really plugged into my world music sensibility today because I've been recording. We said sessions. I've been recording with Frank Zappa and El Shankar, who's a South Indian violin player, amazing musician. I've been recording with Shusha, who's a Persian singer. I've been doing a lot of reggae, a lot of ska. So I was really getting all this different musical ideas and genres and scales and timings, all of it. So once we did this theatre company was open to a lot of that. It's the story of Odysseus coming back from the wars back to Penelope. It's the old story, Homer.
Yes.
There's a lot of scope for it. We had an indie musician. We were playing about 30 instruments on the stage. We had loads of instruments. I did that for 2.5 years, so to about end of the 90s, almost to 2000.
Blimey, that must have been quite something. And then occasionally you get the option to go and do Reform the Globes, did that feel quite an exciting experience, or just one of those things that felt inevitable?
It's the Globes, not the Globes. The Globes.
Globes.
Global Village.
Globe, yes.
Say Global Village Trucking Company, which can take all day. We had a period in the late 90s, I think, was it 97, where the BBC wanted to do a retrospective documentary about the first documentary they did in the 70s, which was called By Way of a Change. And they figured 25 years later, which I think it was, let's do another one. Where are they now, kind of thing? What are they doing now, these same characters? And they picked ours. They had loads of documentaries. They picked ours, and they did a thing 25 years, and we did reform. We did do a couple of gigs, actually, for that. Around that time, we went to Glastonbury. We played at Glastonbury again, and did a couple of gigs. It was short-lived because I was quite busy and the bass player was quite busy, and the others were professional. They do other things, but I've always just done music. That's all I've ever done.
Yes. So does that, in the last kind of 10, 15 years, is it still the kind of case of making more music and recording with different people?
I'm a Cockney rebel.
You are a Cockney rebel. I have just seen that you are one of the Cockney rebels.
So we're just starting to work again now. I've got my own band. I've got I play with GT Moore as well, the reggae guitars. Do you remember GT Moore?
No.
Well, there's a few, but mostly I'm trying to it's going to be even harder now. Trying to get my own music going as well, which was had a little bit of life, and now of course everything's trying to wake up again. I don't know what the climate's going to be. And I'm writing for a sort of TV series that may still been put on hold. Everything's put on hold, so we don't know what's going to come back.
Yes, this must be quite difficult, actually. Has it? Because I did an interview with old Hank Wangford last year when he just brought his new album out, about to go on his tour, do all that, and it all got shut down, and he was feeling very bereft. How have you found the last year?
You know where he got his name, Hank Wangford. He's an old friend, Sam Hutt.
I suppose it's the village near Southwold.
Yeah, exactly. There's a village near almost. We lived in a place called Sotherton in Suffolk, where the band eventually relocated to this big farmhouse I was telling you about.
Yes.
And the nearest village was called Wangford. So Hank Wangford, that's his.
That's his little thing. Nice. Yes. So anyway, he wasn't feeling the love. And I've done all the interviews, not all of them, but a lot of the interviews I've done in the last year, a lot of the musicians have been finding it quite hard to get motivated. What's it been like for you?
Yeah, to a certain extent. Look, if you've got an instrument, you can always play. When there's some downtime, which is unusual for a musician because we're quite nomadic, we like to have things to do and look forward to gigs and blah, blah, blah. But it's also a time possibly to take stock. Look, I've got this beautiful grand piano downstairs, Steinway, that my mum had, and I told her the only thing I want when you pass darling mum, is that piano. That's all I care about. Anyway, I've got it. And you sit and play. What more do you want? You know, if you're a musician, it's different from being an actor. There's no play, right? You can practice with somebody or do it in front of a mirror. Musician, sorry, there's no excuse for saying, what can I do during lockdown? Just play and see what happens. And I've been composing. I've got about 5 new albums. I'm ready to go. You know, I've got so much music. It's not finished for me. It's the motivation's hard because there was a lot of collaborating going on. Collaboration is the sort of life and soul of music. Of course, you can't do that at the moment. We couldn't. We're just starting to again. But I think musically, yeah, there's no gigs. There's very little income. Of course, that's depressing. Yeah, that is, and it's also quite challenging for a lot of people because it's not just the musicians, it's the people behind the scenes, the technicians, the managers, the crews, the lighting people, you know, the sound people, all of those people.
Yes.
They're retraining.
They are tricky. And did you say at the weekend you'd been off at a festival or playing a gig?
Yeah, when we played with Steve Holly, when did we play? We did 2 festivals actually, one in Warwick and one in Derbyshire.
Right.
It's really nice. One was called a pub in the park with Beverly Knight was on after us, great singer. And
yes.
Yeah, we did. It was festival, man. It felt like it was back. You know, I know they did Latitude, didn't they? Just now up in Suffolk, they just had
did Latitude. That's good.
Which I've never played at. Which I keep asking and writing in. Have you got an in there with Latitude, by the way?
No.
I really want to play that festival, man. And it's like if the Globs came back, or even not, if something a connection because we were a Suffolk band just down the road from there. We lived about 5 miles away from the village.
Yes, I mean you definitely, you know. Actually, interestingly enough, with that site, my mother's parents lived on that place because they were kind of what it was called. There was a big house estate, and they were the kind of gardener and cook. I think it was called in service, where you just kind of basically worked for the aristocracy, and that was their kind of. It was that on that estate that they used to live and work, which was interesting. Well, not that much, but yes, interesting stuff. But so with the reissue with Cherry Red Records, was it a case of kind of digging through the archives and sort of finding some unreleased material, thinking this is going to be the one shot of doing a nice little job for this?
I mean, funny enough, there was about, I think there were 9 tracks on the original album, 9 or 10 tracks. Well, there was a couple that we'd recorded that we didn't put on for some reason. Either they didn't fit or we didn't think it was good enough. But listening back to them, actually really nice. So we put a couple of those on. We did some, I think 2 are from John Peel sessions, one of which was on the album. One was literally a live Revox recording off a radio show, another one. I don't even know which one it was, but we got this one track that kind of fitted on, it worked. And then 4 others we got from a live recording with the Greasy Truckers live at Dingwalls in the 70s.
Right.
Which we did a few years ago, 4 bands, supposed to be 4 bands, that was a bit of a disaster. Gong, Camel, Henry Cow and ourselves. We were supposed to be the 4 bands doing a live gig. Only 2 of the bands made it because of a lot of technical problems. But we included those 4 also. So at the end, there's about 18 tracks on the album. I'm showing you. The gatefold cover. There's information. There's a whole, booklets about the band. All kinds of things. Information, lyric sheets.
Did it feel like a nice sense of completion now that you've done it?
But my brother, who's in the biz, much more successful in a way than any musician will be. Joe's done a lot. He was the one who said, look, because he knows somebody in Cherry Red Records, they could be interested in that, and they really were, because they do not such well-known, slightly more, not obscure, but bands that weren't on the top of the radar, but worked, pretty much all around that period, the 70s. And yeah, they jumped at it, and they did a really good job, I must say.
Nice, yes.
So I think we're trying to do a couple of gigs towards the end of the year. We'll see what happens.
Yes. And was it the case, because I now remember that little documentary, was your brother the 14-year-old kid who was the manager?
Jeremy, yeah. He wasn't 14, he was about 17. Yeah, he was 18. He took to it like duck to water, being a manager, getting into the biz. He was really, that was him. remember him saying when we split up, "It's all right, man, it's all right. I'm going to go and join Virgin. I'll change Virgin from within, I'll change them." But you can't change an industry like that. You can't change it. You become part of it. That's fine. And he's discovered a lot of bands. He was an A&R guy for years, but he didn't change the industry.
No, but my God.
That's what happens. Everyone gets sucked in.
But then he became part of the industry instead.
Yeah. And I mean, he's done this. I worked with him a little bit after the band split up, and then I went to America, and then he thought I'd gone, so that was it. I did work with him a bit. He got me the gig with Frank Zappa producing with Al Shankar.
Nice. Well, there you go. So look, just last sort of point.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were able to sort of tell your 16 or 18-year-old some little sense or some bit of wisdom, is there anything that you would have whispered in their ear when they were just about to be launched into the world that is rock and roll and slight jazz and world music?
If you don't love it enough, don't do it. Got to love it. It's got to be more than just, I want to be famous in 5 minutes. You've got to love it. And then people will hear that. Not anything, cooking, writing, furniture. If you're pissed off, you're going to feel that when whatever you're creating, isn't it?
Yes.
That's very important because that's what's lacking. I know it sounds a bit, new age, but you've got to love what you're doing enough. Because there'll be a lot of setbacks, a lot of things. But actually, the more positive you are about it, the less setbacks there'll be. If you'll be uncertain, so just don't worry about the money to start with. Just go for it.
Yes. Keep it going. Well, look, this has been amazing. Well, I'm so pleased we eventually got this together, James.
Well, what's going to happen with it? Tell me.
So I'll use most of it on my radio show, but if you want, I can always podcast it and send you the link, and then you could put it on your website, which I've been looking at earlier today.
We didn't say about I've got a radio show.
Oh, have you?
Just say that?
Yeah, let's talk about your radio show.
Okay, you ready?
I am. I'm ready with the...
I am also an official DJ for Channel Radio down in Ashford, Kent. And I do a 2-hour show every Tuesday from 9 to 11 p.m. called Global Tribal Music. So it's got the global thing from the globs. It's got the tribal music, and I play everything from Indian to African to Middle Eastern to Eastern European to Celtic to jazz to rock, old and new, Aboriginal, everything, Native American.
Does it include a play it again? Sounds like Casablanca. Does it have a play? Can you play it again? Basically,
If you miss the live performance, or it's pre-recorded in my case because no one's going down to the studio, I pre-record it up here. If you miss it, you can go to the site www.channelradio.co.uk, and there's a listen again button for a week until the next show comes around. So you can listen again for a week and just choose the DJ, choose my name, and you'll get that week.
Right. It's got to be done. There you go.
Yeah, do. So I mean, and also people send me quite a bit of stuff. I've had stuff sent from all over the world. Oh, can you play a bit of this? I said, well, sure. Send me an MP3 or an M4A or whatever it is, and I'll try and get it on.
Just put it out there.
Tough. It's not a huge station, but I love doing it. I've always loved being a DJ. I've played the globs quite a bit on it. And I'll play everything from Miles Davis to the Aboriginals playing the didgeridoo and hitting their sticks. I play everything.
Yes. There you go. There you
Nothing's
go.
Off limits.
I know, nothing is off limits. I mean, just on that last point, and it's not a big thing, but you've got one hell of a CV. Not a CV, but are you you've got quite a title, haven't you, in life?
Well, you know that. Yeah, I mean, back in the day, it was worth a lot more. I'm just the thing is the honourable, right? Which could be a politician. In America, if I travel, they think I'm a judge. Right? I don't just wait. Yeah, sure, I'm a judge. Because they don't quite know what that means. Here, it's a bit more loaded, isn't it? But it's very nominal. It doesn't really mean anything.
No, but it's nice to have.
Well, most of my brothers don't. We don't. What's the word? We don't advertise it.
Don't blame you.
That's to be known for what for your talent or whatever.
Well, absolutely, yes. No, it was just like, it's interesting. But no, that's fine. But look, okay, well, I've got that. I'm going to check out your radio show now and listen to your sort of dulcet tones, because frankly, that would be nice.
When would this come out, or when will you do something?
Well, I'm hoping to put it out in 2 weeks, so I'll archive it as what. Well, I'll podcast it, so it won't just disappear after a week. And then, if you want, I can send you the link, and then you can put it to your website and use it, and people from all over the world can go.
The whole thing. I mean, I'll use little bits of it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and people will say, "God, James was great, but that interview was so irritating," and you'll go, "He was all right. He did his best. He did his homework. He did kind of think we were the global trucking company, but we weren't. We're the global village trucking glob."
You're not the first person that said that, by the way. It's a lot. It's a lot of a mouthful.
It is, I know. It's easy to do. Anyway, I'm impressed with the John Porter thing. I'll have to try and find John Porter now because
I'll tell you another little tidbit. He and I were married to the same woman, not at the same time. But when he divorced, or when he got divorced, his first wife, who was Native American, part Native American, while I went back to New Mexico, we got together. So John and I have a kind of very cosmic link with each other. And I see him, he lives down in Wiltshire. I do see him every now and then.
yes. Well, he has got his good CV with his dear old The Smiths, so it's got to be done.
And then in America, he did a lot of stuff out there. I mentioned a few, like Bonnie Raitt and Buddy Guy, Taj Mahal, Jimmy Smith, and he was the go-to man when Pro Tools came out. He's very savvy with it. I don't know how, because he's such a mild, amazing guy. You wouldn't think he would know about it, but he knows about Pro Tools and how they work. And he used to fix people's Pro Tools, because when it first came out, people got really confused about it.
Right. He had it there. Okay, well, John Porter, here we come. I must find him. Anyway, look, thank you.
David, nice to meet up. Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Take care, and I'll keep in touch.
Did I give away too many state secrets or what?
No, there was no state secrets. We won't be disappeared in the middle of the night. But good story about your commune in Suffolk. I love those.
Okay. Well, if we got all night, which we haven't, there's a lot of stories about all that period.
Yes, it's good. Okay, thanks a lot.
All right, no pleasure.
Bye.
And please keep in touch. Let me know when it's all happening and send me something so I can listen to it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, take care. See you. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye.
And that was me in conversation with James Lascelles, just in case you didn't know. A massive thank you to James for that. I do believe he has got a website, which is Google James Lascelles.co.uk, and I'm sure you'll be there. And yes, this has been David Eastaugh, the C86 Show. Hopefully I didn't just say that before, but if I did, sorry about that. It's age. I repeat myself now. But if you want to contact me, you can on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Just do C86 Show. All these shows have been archived. You can find those on Spotify, iTunes, Podbean. Do C86 Show again. Anyway, look, have a great week. Stay safe and tune in for more riveting interviews.